Hey everyone, Paul Riopelle here. Welcome to episode 11. No doubt you've heard of the legendary Sound City recording studio in Los Angeles. Well, my guest today was there in the beginning. I'm talking about recording engineer Steve Escallier. Yeah, and by the way, he also was a recording engineer on Saving Grace, Take a Chance, A Little Bit at a Time. This is a good one. We're going to hear some great stories about Sound City in the early days. And Steve's a great guy. And you know what? Let's get going. Welcome back to the Riopelle Room. Okay, everybody. Welcome back to the Riopelle Room. I'm very excited about this one today. And by the way, Steve, I want you to notice the fade I'm doing. I learned this from you. Yeah. Slow and easy.
That's it. What's the trick to keeping it smooth, though?
I don't know.
The trick to keeping it smooth is to start slow and kind of speed up a little as you go down.
Oh, am I doing it?
If you do it all in one, okay. Oh, you're doing good.
Okay. Okay, everybody. Yes, my guest today is the one and only Steve Escallier. Who is Steve Escallier? Well, let's put it this way. Let's say your favorite Riopelle album is Saving Grace, or your favorite Riopelle album is Take a Chance, or your favorite Riopelle album is Little Bit at a Time, and I could go on and on. This man was, if not the recording engineer on the album, definitely one of the recording engineers on those albums. So he's here today in the Riopelle Room. Steve, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
Yeah, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
No COVID virus.
Well, that's a plus. So we got a lot to talk about. We got to talk about the sessions. I have many memories, and I know you do too. But first of all, what I like to do with all my guests, Steve, and we're going to do this, we're going to go back in time, and we're going to get into my little time machine here. And so let's go back. Here we go. Oh.
Wow.
So anyway, yes, we're going to get to the albums Little Bit at a Time and Take a Chance. First of all, Steve, a little bit of your beginnings with Sound City. Sound City is where these records were recorded, the legendary Sound City. Although at the time, did we all think of it as legendary yet? Or maybe you did.
No,
we didn't. Okay.
No, it was just what was happening at the time.
Yeah, right. Now it's looked on as the legendary Sound City because of all the amazing records that were.
Oh, well, yeah. When I got there, it was just a backwater studio out in the boonies where nobody knew about it.
Right.
It was way out of the Hollywood beaten path,
How did you get a job there? What did you do? How old were you, and how did that happen?
I worked for A&M Records to begin with.
Okay.
From 1971 to 1973. And of no fault of my own, Larry Levine, who was a very famous engineer from the Phil Spector era.
Of course, yeah.
Jerry would know Larry. I'm sure
yeah.
he worked with him.
Yeah.
Larry just didn't like me. He thought I was taking advantage of. The engineers there told me, if you want to learn how to do this, you need to come in on your own time and do it. Practice. We're going to have you busy all the time, so you're going to see how it goes. But to really get a handle on it, you need to push some faders and turn some knobs and record some live people and do that stuff. And so I did that for a few nights. I've got some friends. They were all, in fact, artists on the label of A&M. And the producers that were producing them, I was assisting as an engineer. I met them and they said, well, hey, let's go in and record some stuff tonight. I said, yeah, great. So when that got back to Larry, he just accused us all of stealing from the company.
Oh.
And I said, well, no, we were stealing. The engineers told us we could do this if we kept it cool and kept it clean.
Yeah.
And it never got worked out, so I just wasn't there anyway. Anyway, a week later, I found a job in a little studio out in Tarzana called Bat Chance Productions. And one afternoon, the owner and the two owners of the place were really kooks.
Okay.
And I was always, I need some tape and I need, hustling at them to get supplies.
Yeah.
And one Saturday afternoon, I didn't have any quarter-inch tape, and I was doing a mix. So I looked in the phone book and I found the studio. The closest studio was Sound City in Van Nuys.
Right.
I called them up and they said, "Yeah, we got the tape. Come on by." I went by there and I saw the place and I was like, "Wow, this is way better than what I was working." And it was still in its infant stage. It didn't have a lot of really great stuff,
Right.
but they did have great mics, a great room, and they had a Neve console, which was like the first one. Well, no, I was there when they got the Neve console.
Was that Studio A that had the Neve?
Yeah.
And that's the one Dave Grohl has now, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, he bought that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just said, "Hey, do you guys ever need any help around here? I'd love to do stuff with you. I'd love to work here. I'm working at a little studio over here, but I'm not happy. I'd love to be able to work here."
Yeah.
So they said, "Well, nothing going on right now." And it was, a slow time. They were just getting, in fact, Joe was always worrying about losing the business in those days. And there was a guy named Keith Olsen.
Yeah.
He was like the only breadwinner there at that time. And he wasn't anybody famous yet. He was working on projects of his own, but he was drawing people in.
Yeah.
And I got a call one night from Joe, and he says, "Hey, there's an engineer here who his engineer bailed out on him, didn't show up. Do you think you could come down and help him out?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love to." So I got down there. Well, it turns out it was Keith Olsen, and he was working on Buckingham Nicks.
Right.
So there I was. And I met Steven, I met Lindsay and Keith. And for the next couple of months, I was just working with Keith pretty much on different things, George Calderone, Waddy Wachtel, stuff like that, just assisting and watching. My job was to keep my mouth shut, sit by the tape machine, to keep the track sheets up to date.
Right.
Keep your eye on the producer and the artist, and what if they look over at you for something, respond. Right. Don't ask any questions, like that. It was like that. But Keith was so cool. He'd say, "Look, write down the things that you want to know that you can't ask here, and I'll stick around with you after the session and give you some lessons."
Oh, great. That's
yeah,
cool.
he was marvelous.
Yeah.
And that just turned into Joe saying, "Hey, can you just hang with us permanently?"
We should say who Joe is. I think you mentioned Joe, but who is Joe?
Joe Gottfried was a entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And for one story about Keith and I'll tell later. He was also a honorary member of the Los Angeles Police Department.
Right. So he owned Sound City?
Joe was the owner of Sound City.
Okay.
And it was just him and a guy named Mark. I'm trying to think of Mark's last name. I can't think of Mark's name. They were roommates. And Mark was doing some engineering and stuff, but he wasn't really an engineer, but he knew his way around a little bit. Anyway, Joe owns a studio, and he was also a manager of a couple of local bands. And I think it was Keith that started getting the place noticed by people.
Right.
I'm trying to think of how it turned into where all these big names started coming there. Again, I'm pushing 70 years old here.
Yeah,
now.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I'll just say for the people out there, Keith Olsen, who was on the Riopelle records, he was the main engineer on the Saving Grace record, and he co-produced the Take a Chance record and worked on most of it. But I'm thinking he had to leave at a certain part because he had other sessions, and you kind of took over on the Take a Chance record.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you exactly what that was.
But real quick, let me just say that Keith Olsen, for people that don't know, he produced Rick Springfield, Fleetwood Mac, an Ozzy record, Pat Benatar, Grateful Dead, Buckingham Nicks, of course, that you mentioned. So Keith Olsen, he's quite a resume that man had.
Yeah,
the late great.
Most of those groups, if not all of, in fact, in all of those ones you just mentioned, I was the assistant engineer on a lot of that, just helping them out. And now here's my biggest regret was I just never thought to ask for credit on the records. I never thought that I should have to. I just thought automatically got credit if you worked on these things.
Right.
And that wasn't the case. So a lot of these things I say I was a part of, you can't verify.
Right.
Because my name's not on it, but I was there for some of the biggest moments in rock history.
Well, your name is on the Riopelle records, so that's good.
Oh yeah.
Even when you were the second engineer, like on
Yeah,
Saving Grace album.
Well, that's another thing for me. The Riopelle records for me as an engineer in my career are the most important things I've ever done.
Oh wow, yeah, it was
Yeah,
great
to
work.
me, I mean they're crown jewels in my cap.
There's so many memories from your time and from my perspective as a little kid at that time, so I'm going to be all over the place with questions that just pop in my head, Steve. So I want you to bear with me. My first one is, and Dave Plen and I talked about this, and this was kind of Keith's idea, is to put Plen out in the parking lot for the guitar solo and Blues on My Table. Do you remember that? Were you there that evening?
I'm sure yes, I was. Yes, I was.
Anything you can remember about that night? I know Plen said it was freezing cold, so they had a bonfire and a shopping cart.
Yeah, well, we were like, he was out there, and we had Mike hooked up, and we had cables running down the hall up into the studio.
Right.
And he was sitting there, and we didn't have the fire idea yet. Yeah. He was sitting there and trying to get it together, and he's leaning into his top, and I go, guys, it's freezing out here. I don't know if my hands are getting stiff. Well, I'm not sure we're going to get this right. Yeah. And we said, well, hold on. And we went out because we remembered there was a building right to the front of the parking lot that was not part of the studio, that was going through some renovation. And there was a pile of wood laying out there. Uh-huh. And there was, I remembered there was a hallway. The place was it was a big walled off parking lot. But there was a hallway cut into the side of it that went out through to the back of the building, which was right along the railroad tracks. Uh-huh. And I remember there was a shopping cart in there, like an abandoned shopping cart. Yeah. The thing about that hallway was it was a place where the bums used to sleep and go to the bathroom. Yeah. And it was vile to walk into that hall. Right. It was like, wow. Anyway, I kind of eyes watering, nose running, pulled that cart out of there, and we rolled it over by Dave, and we put all that extra wood that was laying all over the place. We stuffed that in there, and we started a bonfire sitting right next to him. Right. In the thing. And he was like, yeah, that's much better. So we all went back in the room, and he's blazing through a solo, and I'm trying to remember what song it was.
It was Blues on My Table.
Blues on My Table. Yeah. And all of a sudden he's on the mic, guys. Hold up. We said, what? Stop this. Stop it. What? What's wrong? He goes, the cops are here. Uh-oh. The cops just drove up. What do I do? Well, hold on. We're coming. So we go down the hallways, and the cops are like, what's going on here, man? What are you guys doing? This is a bonfire. You can't build a bonfire in the middle of town. And they were like, well, we're making a record. And, Keith started taking, he took the reins and, well, we're making a record, officer. And, we're looking for special sounds. And, it's cold out here. So we're just cuffing it, winging it. He goes, okay, well, I'm going to have to ask you to put the fire out and go back inside. But I understand what you're doing. So no problem from us as far as tickets or fines or anything. But you got to put that stuff away. And he also said, the reason they showed up was because they were down at Tommy's Burgers, which was about a half mile away up on Sepulveda Boulevard. Right. And they were up there, and they heard the guitar playing. Wow. Cool. They heard this guitar wailing because he was playing, he was searing solo. And they said, what the hell is that? Somebody's breaking the curfew, right? Because it was late at night. Yeah. And all of a sudden they followed their noses or their ears and showed up at the place. There we go. So which wasn't the first time that happened to Keith and I. Oh, yeah, I know. Where the cops showed up for, other reasons. Right. So there's the story of the guitar solo for Blues on My Table.
she's done to your heart. Who do you cry to after she left you? Why should have known, man? She's gone from the start. Girl, gone from the start. Well, they all tried to warn me. Oh, but I had already touched her. Well, they all tried to tell me about the trouble she brings. Well, but I get so high, right? I'm off on a bright light. You know I got burned, man. Now she's taking my way, flown away with my way, flown away with my way. Oh, you know, you know. Oh. Rain on my window, got rain in my eyes this morning. Got the blues on my table, I got the blues on my bed. Well, the girl didn't love me, alright, but she just didn't leave me. Was why would she wed me? Lady left me for days. Lady left me for days. Lady left me for days. Oh, you know, no, no, lady left me for days. Oh, you know, no, lady left me for days. Lady left me for days. Oh, you know, lady left me for days. Oh, you know, lady left me for days. One more.
So yeah, that's great. So now that we're on the Saving Grace session, I wasn't around a lot for the Saving Grace recordings, so I didn't start hanging out at the studio till the next album. And
I thought that was the first album. In fact, I'm pretty sure that was the first album Jerry came in with to us.
it was, yes,
He had Harvey producing.
Harvey
and-
Grufferman, yeah.
Yes, Harvey was there. Stuart Margolin was there.
The rumor is, what I've heard over the years, is that Harvey kind of really didn't do a lot. It was mainly you and Keith and Jerry.
Oh, yeah, that was totally true. That was totally true. Harvey liked to sit around and I think he smoked a lot.
Yeah.
And tell stories and stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess you need someone to do that, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about, like, so of course, legendary studio musicians like Jim Gordon on drums.
I was going to say my first great memory of that is Jim Gordon.
Yeah, what a drummer.
Big fan of that guy.
Yeah.
And him and Jim Keltner are my favorite drummers in the world.
Right.
Oh, well, I got to put Steve Gadd in there too, but.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow, all these guys. That was one of my great things about working with Keith. He always hired the best studio, David Foster, Wilton Felder.
Wilton Felder, yeah, he played bass on a lot of tracks on the Saving Grace album.
Yeah, he did. Who else was on there?
Well, we had Clyde King doing background vocals.
Clyde King doing background vocals.
And some of those other Motown guys, which I don't recall.
Was Jim Horn, the sax player, wasn't on that one. He comes later.
He came later. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Just the studio musicians and the way they locked in with Jerry's music. They loved playing it. That was real evident. It wasn't just another session for them. They were like, wow, this is good stuff, So it was fun. That part of it was fun.
So let's move on to, let's say, Take a Chance record, where you probably, when I'm looking at the credits on Take a Chance, it actually says you did some remixes. And my guess is Keith started getting really busy with the Fleetwood Mac team.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
And that's just a guess of mine, but I'm looking. No,
you're right.
Yeah. Because it says you mixed, let me see. You mixed Take a Chance and Steppin' Out and did remixes on Baby Rose and Red Ball.
Right.
Yeah.
The story with that was during that record, that wasn't the record where a little bit of what time was the one where we'd get all in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Or there were times where my dad and I would pick you up at like 5 a.m. and go into the studio.
Oh,
do you remember that? Knock on your door way early in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Take a Chance was at the time that Fleetwood Mac rolled into Keith's life.
Yes.
That was just all happenstance. Some guy that was trying to be a manager at the studio was at the Laurel Canyon store, and he met Nick Fleetwood there, and he said, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" And Nick said, "Well, we're looking for a place to record." He goes, "I know the place. A guy named Keith Olsen." Yeah. And he brought them there. Keith played them the Buckingham Nicks album, and the rest was history.
Right.
Mixed words were after the record stopped. Mixed words were, "Hey, do you think they want to join a band?"
Yeah. You remember Lindsay sang on this album. He sang on River on the Run.
Yeah.
On the Take a Chance album.
Yeah. That I was the only assistant on staff at the time, and so Joe had me working that, and he had me doing Jerry, and I was backing and forth, and I was really kind of loyal to Jerry because that to me was my big thing. That was the first big thing I was involved in as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And Fleetwood Mac was a lot of headache. But I kept having to go. Joe kept calling me out of the studio to go do other things. And then Fleetwood got totally bummed by that. He was just like, "No, I can't have this guy running out of my room all the time like this. It's disturbing me. And it's interrupting the session and all that."
Right.
So he kind of let me, he said, "Well, Keith, you got to tell that guy he's got to go." So Keith said, "Hey, man, I hate to tell you this, but here, I need you to help me finish that Riopelle record." So,
okay.
Yeah. So if you could hang in with that. And I said, "Are you kidding? I love that." So that's how that got going.
Yeah. And it's something that I love on this record. I mean, obviously you mixed stuff and you were the engineer on several things. Well, you and Keith both. But on Red Ball Texas Flyer, I think are you playing harmonica on that?
Yep.
That is so great, that harmonica on that song. Many people probably don't even realize, just from hearing it live so much, that was a harmonica on the original record, and your harmonica part is so cool. As a matter of fact, I want to play Red Ball Texas Flyer right now because of your harmonica. So let's take a listen. Here's Red Ball Texas Flyer and Steve on the harmonica.
Great song too.
Well, I'm driving to New Orleans on a half a tank of gas. Got a Jesus on my dashboard, got a third wife on my ass. They don't think I'm gonna make it, but I swear I think I can. In my Red Ball Texas Flyer, I'm a Red Ball Texas man. Well, I left Big D this morning, just about to break of day. 16 minutes and a bowl of chili. Well, I'm bound to find my way if I get to
Yeah, what a great song.
Oh, yeah.
I just have just one problem with the mix.
What's that?
Needs more harmonica.
I thought the harmonica is so great, and at the end there, where the kind of creeps back in there with the fiddle.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that. I didn't.
Well, that was Byron Berline, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
Byron Berline and Roger Bush on that slap upright bass.
Yeah.
Were you a harmonica player, or you kind of just fooled
Yeah, I
around?
used to when I had my bands before, in high school and right after I got out of high school, I hitchhiked around and I moved to New York and I had a band there and I played harmonica and sang. I loved the blues. I used to be a blues guy.
I mean, it's a great, what you played on that is perfect. It's such a great, that little melody you do in there is such a nice little piece. I love that. So yeah, so that's Red Ball. Take a Chance. What else do we remember about this? Well, I remember playing pinball when I would go visit the studio a lot during this.
But here's another. You can ask Dave about this. We had the Betty Boop game.
Okay.
That it was Pong. It was the very first Pong game, and it was always
right.
And we called it Betty Boop. Betty Boop. Yeah, that was that. And they had the what was the shark? It was the Shark Eater game.
Oh, is that?
It was like almost like a video game, but it was ancient technology.
Right. I remember.
It was like an illuminated screen with this animated shark that you had to chomp things with.
As a matter of fact, I think you see that in the movie Jaws. That when they're at an arcade, you see that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mostly remember the pinball machine, and then of course, like a little coffee maker and that refrigerator in that center room. So Steve, let's moving right along. Let's go to like little bit at a time, which this for me, my dad brought me to a lot of these mixing sessions, like some of the overdub sessions. Actually, Take a Chance. I can vividly remember a session where Dave did an overdub for Baby Rose. He put a second guitar on that part, and I remember him just sitting in the control room. I don't remember. I think it was Studio A, but which mostly was overdubs were done in Studio B. I think mainly, maybe not, but that's kind of I just remember one of the first sessions I went to. But little bit at a time sessions, I went to a lot of those, and we would. I remember one of my memories is picking you up at 5 a.m. We'd go to your house and go do some mixing for the Little Bit at a Time record.
Which was So Young.
So Young's on that record.
Dave told you this story. My sister had some friends come down to see that.
That's a great story. You got to tell it again. Yeah.
Okay. My sister called. Oh, she was a teacher. Well, she's retired now, but she was teaching middle school kids and special education kids. And there was a lot of kids from the ghetto. Kids from South Central Los Angeles and places like that. And 2 of these kids were heavy metal punker dudes.
Yeah.
And she said, well, yeah. And they were always talking about music and stuff. And she said, well, my brother's a recording engineer. Maybe I can get him to let us see a recording session sometime. And they said, well, you really could? That'd be great. She said, yeah, let's call. So she called me. I said, yeah, we were going to be Saturday morning. So we had a Saturday booked for overdubs on So Young.
Right.
And I said, Jerry, I think my sister, no problem. Have her come on down. So they come in. Well, it happened to be the background vocal session, and the whole part was doot, 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 doot. It was like that. And then Jerry was on one piano and David was on the other piano, and they were playing single finger piano notes of the same notes.
Right.
Ding, 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 and then doot, 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 and standing around the mic doing that. And it was like 8 hours of that. Just doot, 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 ding, 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 doot, doot, And these guys were sitting there with their mouths hanging over like, what the fuck? What the hell is this?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden my sister goes, well, I think we're going to leave now, but thanks for having us, guys. And I said, oh, yeah, great. I called her that night and I said, so what was it? How'd they like it? And she said, oh my God, they hated it, Steve. They thought it was the stupidest thing they ever saw. They thought there was going to be bands jumping around and drummers blasting and all that stuff. And all they got was doot, doot, doot.
That is such a great story. That's unfortunate they had to be there. Well, that's how recording sessions go. Sometimes they spend a lot of time.
Showbiz is not pretty.
Yeah, it's not pretty. So other than us starting early, I mean, you guys did all kinds of crazy hours, but I remember when I would go, it would be early morning. And I also remember sometimes I guess some of the sessions went late night, and I remember passing out on a couch and you waking me up and going, come on. You took me up on the roof on the freezing cold air, and you said, come on, we'll wake up. And we ran around the roof. Do you remember this?
Yes, I do.
Maybe that's something that you did frequently, but you took me up there once.
No, you were the only one.
Oh, okay. So we end up
nobody else would go with me. I'm
yeah.
Sure.
We ran around.
You were just young enough to say, "Oh, well, that might be a good idea."
Well, you were so much fun. I mean, I dug hanging out with you, and that was just the cartoons we would talk about.
Oh, and well, I'm a big kid at heart. Yeah, and when I'm around younger people, I don't call them kids, but 8, 9, 10, they open me up. They just bring out the kid in me. You know, so
well, you and I have a long history of cartoon quotes and stuff like that, which is great.
Yeah.
Well, you know, another thing. Do you remember that you had a shirt made, and I think it was a Sound City shirt on the front, and said Sound Surgeon on the back, or maybe it didn't say Sound City.
I had that. It was made by a woman that I worked with at Pantheon in Phoenix, Arizona.
Ah.
But I was at Pantheon. Her name was Marge Price, and she was like this matronly old lady, and she was a country songwriter, and her songs were really pretty good. And she was always trying to shop them, and I kind of became her grandson, working on some of the records with her, and she made me that shirt.
And did you know that I wanted to have a shirt after I saw that? I wanted to have a shirt that said Sound Intern.
Oh, Sound Intern.
You were the sound surgeon. I was like kind of shadowing you and trying to learn a little bit of that.
Sure.
You were doing. But
That's
anyway.
perfect.
That was fun. So yeah, and we would, when we did those early morning ones, we would get breakfast jacks, and I remember my dad, he always dug like a Coca-Cola with lots of ice and Heath candy bars.
Yep.
That's just something I remember from those days.
Probably one of the reasons I don't have any teeth anymore.
Oh, it's his fault. Yeah, see?
No, that was my love of what are those? I can't think of them. Starburst.
Oh God, Starburst.
My addiction to Starburst.
What about Now and Laters? Did you ever get into those? That's one of my favorite candies.
Yeah.
Kind of the sour tartness of it.
I'm into Sour Patch Kids now.
Oh yeah, those are good.
I love those things.
Yeah.
I've got 5 or 6 bags of them right here behind me.
Oh, of course you do. Yeah. Good job. So I'm gonna play another song. Another thing that you used to do, you did this just for me. You did this at the time that we were doing a Little Bit at a Time album. I was kind of really becoming enamored with drums. I started playing drums. Jerry Gibson would show me some stuff, and you did this for me. You would take the multi-track and you'd make a cassette of only the drums. So we had the whole track with all the instruments, vocals, everything, and you just ran off a copy to a cassette of just drums on a couple songs like I think Northbound, Easy Driver, and this next one that I'm going to play, Real Fat.
We're gonna get real.
Yeah. So this is one that on this album you were the engineer on this one.
Right. Well, on A Little Bit at a Time, I was engineer on all of it.
And you were engineer on the whole album. And so let's listen to talking about fade outs. Real Fat has what I like to call the Hey Jude fade, because it's a long fade out. And
yes, yeah, whoa,
yes. So anyway, let's listen to Real Fat, and we'll talk about it. You can see if this brings up any more memories for you, Steve. Here we go, Real Fat.
Been up all night, stroking a hot slotting machine. I got lemons in my eyes, I got cherries in my dreams. Well, I put put in 6 and I got back 417. And I'm going back tonight, just me and my machine. Oh, we're gonna get real fat. Oh, mama, we gonna get fat. We sit out on our boat and watch TV. You and me, we real close. Oh, baby, we close. I can feel it in my bones. I can feel it in my swing. I'll buy you some pantyhose and a diamond ring. Oh, I made a deal with God today. Finally made a deal. I gave him the devil, and he gave me the field. Well, it's all right with me. I ain't afraid of wealth. Oh, but I don't want a lawyer. I'll handle it all myself. Oh, we're gonna get real fat. Oh, mama, we gonna get fat. We'll pay off the phone and call your whole family. You and me, we real close. Oh, baby, we close. Well, I'll chase you every day, and I'll catch you every night. Tell me your old man don't treat you right. Well, I'm a fool, and you think I'll lose everything I got. Well, I may be awful drunk, but I know when I'm getting hot. I spend half of this here money on something to keep me awake. I got blisters on my fingers, got a smile on my face. We're gonna get real fat. Oh, baby, we gonna get fat. We sit out on our boat and watch TV. You and me, we real close. Oh, baby, we close. I can feel it in my bones. I can feel it in my swing. I'll buy you some pantyhose and a diamond ring. Oh, 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 oh,
Whoa, 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 whoa. I love that Jerry's little ad lib at the end there.
Oh yeah, the other night I listened to this album for the first time all the way through in a long time.
Yeah.
And every song bowls me over. Every song, the lyrics, the grooves, the guitar playing is incredible.
Right.
You know, this is one of the greatest albums ever made. I think. And I listen to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a great album.
Gibson and John Harris, they had a thing, man.
Yeah. Oh, I got the funny Jerry Gibson story.
Oh yeah. Okay.
We got finished with a session one night, and it was late. Jerry told us his whole history about Sly and the Family Stone.
Right.
I can't get into it because it was like I was blushing during some of that story.
Wow.
It was incredible. Yeah, that was the one night that I think Jerry and I really bonded.
Now, Jerry, Gibson or Riopelle? Which one?
Gibson.
Gibson. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for those that don't know, the drummer on those albums on the Little Bit of Time out, Jerry Gibson, also earlier in the early '70s, I think, played with Sly and the Family Stone for a bit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Womack. But he played with Bobby Womack too.
He said the first night he played with them, he made $20,000.
Wow.
And he had been playing just, with his Texas bands and stuff like that, clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
He said he took the money, it was in cash. The manager came out and said, here's your money. And it was a big wad of cash, $20,000. He said he went back to his room. He stood there for a minute. He took all his clothes off, threw the money up in the air, and jumped in bed with it.
Gibson did that?
Yeah.
That's funny. That's a great story. Yeah, he was a riot. I remember him answering the phone in the studio. They had, remember the telephone that was kind of in the behind the console, that it would ring when someone was trying to reach him, and hey right now with that big Texas accent. And Gibson is the guy that you hear on Red Ball doing all those yells, those hoo-ah!
Yeah.
So
you guys did a compilation thing, right?
Yeah, and you had a story. You did write something in that.
Did that ever get in there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it did?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I see. I don't have a copy of that. How do I get a hold of that?
I'll send you one.
Okay.
I think the story you told in there was about the kids.
That may be, but I wrote another one that Jerry seemed to be real interested in. It was the one where Mike Dunnigan streaks the background vocal session.
Oh, let me hear it. Tell me about that.
It was in Studio A. It was late at night, and it was Maury was there.
Who?
Maury McLeod.
Murray McLeod.
Murray McLeod was there. Stewart was there. I'm trying to think who else was there singing background vocals. I think it was on Silly Old Gigolo.
Okay.
It might have been that song. But Mike Dunnigan was there, and it was really late at night, and Dunnigan's going, "Hey, I want to do something, Steve." He goes over there. I'm going to go around the side of this hallway. You remember how the Studio A had a hallway down one side that was in the back side of it where all those bedrooms were back in there?
Yeah.
And then the other side led out to the hallway and the game room and all that.
Right.
So he went down the back bedroom side. He said, "I'm going to go down there. And when I come back and stick my head in here and give you the sign, flick on all the lights." Well, the overhead lights in that studio were all big fluorescent. It was high ceiling fluorescent lights. Mm-hmm. And we had it all down to real dim and real dark. And they had all these baffles around, these big, tall, they call them gobos or baffles, I call them. And, curved around them like in a C shape. And they're all tucked inside there so the sound wouldn't travel. And so they couldn't see either side of them or behind them or in that, just straight ahead at the glass. And Keith and I, and I don't know who else, was sitting in the control. And Dunnigan goes, look, he sticks his head in. We didn't know what he was going to do either. He sticks his head in the door and he goes, "Okay." And he goes, "Now." And I flick on the lights and they're right in the middle of singing. And the bright lights just come on and they all look, "What the hell?" And Dunnigan comes out the side door, bounding like a kangaroo, knees up to his chest, bounding out across the thing, completely naked except for a pair of rainbow socks on. His junk bouncing in front of him, and he just bounces across these guys, and they all just fell on the floor. We laughed so hard, everybody's just out of it laughing.
Well, it's funny. I did an episode with Tammy and George, and Tammy had a story about Dunnigan and how he was just hilarious. And again, Michael Dunnigan, everybody. Michael Dunnigan was the road manager for Jerry, but he was also obviously going to a lot of sessions. He played harmonica also on a couple songs.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, he was hilarious. He was really hilarious. So much fun. Oh, but you know what? On the Take a Chance album, you're listed as playing. Well, no, you're not listed as playing this, but your nickname on there says Shoes, and that's because. Let me see. What does it say? Yeah, Stomp Tambourine. One of the names is Steve Shoes Escallier, yeah. And I think that's because you played your wooden shoes on Baby Rose. Clack, 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 right?
Yeah. Well, that happened.
Like just a percussive thing.
I was kind of a fashion hound in those days, and I had chemin de fer jeans
Uh-huh.
with bell jeans and flowery shirts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I wore a pair of high clog. They were 2-inch high. I was way ahead of the game there. I think. I was way before Lady Gaga.
Yeah, way
And
more.
I had these 2-inch high clog sandals.
Uh-huh.
They were like sandals on the top, and then these big giant 2-inch soles underneath. And they clopped when you walked. They were like wooden shoes. Clop, clop, clop. And one day I was with Keith and Waddy Wachtel, and we were working on some project. Waddy was doing a guitar overdubs, and Keith was in charge, and the artist wasn't even there. And they were we got to put some percussion on this. What do we mean? I don't know. And they're tapping on things, and they're banging on things. They're hitting the desk, and they're picking up stuff. And we got to find something that sounds different. You know? And I said, well, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. And I stepped down off the carpet or onto the floor, and I went, clop, clop, clop. And Waddy goes, what the hell is that? I go, that's my shoes. He goes, give me them shoes. I go, okay. And he takes them out there and he slips them on his hands and back. That's why I learned I could play my shoes. Why they played them on a record that they were doing.
Oh, so then you brought them back out again for Baby Rose. Then.
Yeah. I still have them. I still have them in my collection. I keep them in my closet somewhere. Yeah. Those shoes also ended up on I'm Winning.
Oh, is that right?
I'm winning and I won't get fooled again. Santana Keith was producing and I was assisting. And the band wasn't around when we did that either. They all left and it was like 2 a.m. Keith goes, you got them shoes?
Oh, that's cool.
He goes, let's throw them on that record. You know, I said, okay.
Well, those shoes made it on several records.
Yeah.
That's cool. And there's also credit for Keith Olsen, Keith the Bruiser, because I guess he played tambourine on something and bruised up his leg pretty bad. Or whatever he did.
Yeah. That's fine.
So going back to a little bit of time, I want to see if you actually remember this, because it was a big deal to me. But I remember the song Fantasy. I'm all over the place. I got to go back. Real Fat, the flute solo. Jim Horn played. He was known to be a saxophone player, but he played the flute in that. And I remember there was like 3 takes, and you kind of were going from one to the other, and you can kind of hear them overlap a little bit, and it sounds really cool. And on that mix of the Real Fat.
I wonder if that was a mistake that worked out, or we did that.
It could have been, but it's wonderful. It sounds great. So there was a live version of the song Fantasy before it was recorded, that I heard this cymbal hit in a certain section, and I would always tell my dad, "Oh, I love when Gibson hits that cymbal right there," but it didn't sound the same on the record when the band actually recorded it in the studio. And I remember going to the studio that day and going, "Oh man, I really wish that cymbal was right there." So we were taking a break. I think it was just you, me, and Jerry, and in the studio. And Jerry was going to get some coffee or something like that. And he goes, "Hey, why don't you there was a drum set that was set up in Studio B. It was another session. I don't know whose drums it was. And then it was you and me, and I sat behind the drums, and you recorded me hitting the cymbal in this bridge section. One hit. Right. And I don't even know if it was that great, because you mic'd the kick drum and the cymbal, and I probably played them off time or anything, but it worked, and it's on the record, and it's fun. It was just a fun memory for me.
Oh, isn't that fun to have something on a record?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, a cymbal, a drum. Yeah. So that was kind of just you and me in that moment. You were recording it, and I was playing it, and I guess Jerry stepped out. I don't know where he went to get.
Yeah, let the kids have fun.
Let the kids have fun, right? And we did.
Fantasy is an important song.
It is.
The lyrics in that song are just, just incredible. I that's a song I always think, I want Paul McCartney to hear this.
Oh yeah. I think he would have loved it, like Ray Charles sang it too.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, let's listen to it. Fantasy. And here we go.
Oh, all my life Fantasized a gift that I could never give. Fantasy's a long way to go. Fantasy is the only truth I know. Oh, fantasy, only you can know just what you mean to me. I know that I could love you to the bone. Fantasy, I can't live alone. Fantasy is the only way back home. Your blood is on my bed. I give you all I have. Now all there is to give in my fantasy. I'm where I'm the man that I was meant to be. And then you slowly fade away from me. All I ever wanted was a dream. Fantasy's not everything it seems. Your blood is on my bed. I give you all I have. Now all there is to give them my fantasy. Fantasized world where I could never live. Fantasized the gift that I could never give you. Fantasy's a lonely way to go. Fantasy is the only truth I know.
Ah, that song is so poignant.
Yeah, it's great.
And the guitar playing and
Yeah.
his vocal on there is just, it just reaches right into your heart. Just, the whole thing is just,
Monty Stark is playing synth on that. Remember him?
yeah, whole Monty, man.
Yeah. I remember
What a
his
guy.
big modular synth set up in Studio
Yeah.
B in the control room. So I know there's a couple stories that you have, and I'm going to give you a little reminder. There's two. One is a visual that you always talk about that happened during the solo in So Young, which was cool. And then the other one is a story that you have about Keith Olsen when they came to bust something at the studio, bust up something.
Oh, yeah.
I
That's
wanna-
a good one.
If you feel like telling those stories, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's see. So Young,
Yeah.
it's a major song. And the mixing and all the stuff that went into it was paramount.
Yeah.
And it took every one of us that were involved that day. And it was Dave, Jerry, myself, Keith, I'm trying to think, maybe Mike Dunnigan. It took every one of us with our hands on the board and hands on somebody had some faders and somebody had some knobs and somebody was pushing a thing that made something come up. It was just, everybody was doing something and it was all moving all the time. In the verse that this went here and then the chorus that came down here and that went up there. And it came to the guitar solo ripping, and the guitar solo, but the guitar solo comes in, there's a big break in the,
Yeah.
the guitar just one big note flying overhead to come down on a big bang.
Yeah.
At the end and slide into the out chorus of the song. And as the guitar hits, everybody has a move to push the thing up and then fade all down and then wham, come back in for the hit.
Yeah.
Everybody's in the seats all along the side of the all in front of the console, side by side, with heads over each other's shoulders and arms kind of getting crossed, and everybody had a different thing to push. And I don't know why we didn't all have it just lined up so it was all in front of each of us, but we were all reaching over each other, doing all kinds of stuff. And
like a game of Twister. It was like playing Twister.
It was. The guitar hits and as you see that swell go down, I was sitting just behind, and the swell goes up, and everybody at once, all at once, in a slow motion move, just rocks back in unison. And when the slam hits, the chairs just boing forward to the console.
Right.
It was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. It was synchronicity, man.
Yes.
It was unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah. The other one was we did the Cowsills. Remember the Cowsills?
Of course.
From the 60s?
As a matter of fact, Susan Cowsill just sang. We did a Riopelle tribute in Scottsdale last year, February, and Susan Cowsill sang "Promenade" and sang "Man and a Woman." It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, but she's great. Oh, she's great. But anyway, go ahead. What's the story with the Cowsill?
Oh, this is a good one. We were working with the Cow. It was Billy, Barry, and Paul, the three brothers.
Yeah.
And they were all grown men now, and all in a very compromised state.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they were in that situation, but they'd get around a microphone and everything would just start clicking.
Right.
I mean, they knew what they were doing in a recording studio, those guys. They'd grown up doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
But Barry and Billy, Barry was the second oldest, Billy was the oldest, and Paul, was Paul? Paul was the youngest? Barry, Billy, and Paul. Yeah, it was Barry and Billy were always at each other.
Uh-huh.
Arguing about the tones and arguing about the title and arguing about the lyrics and it was just kind of and it was Waddy Wachtel's it was one of his early big production jobs as a producer for a record label.
Right. To
produce this. They were called Bridie Murphy.
Uh-huh.
That was the name of the band. And they started fighting and Waddy says to Keith, you got to help me do something. I can't have this happening. If this gets back to the con, I'm ruined. This is getting out of hand. And Keith said, well, let's just occupy them and get some background vocals going and get them out of each other's face. Yeah. Well, then the tension was still there, and one of them came walking in, and the other one was in there, and they were together. And we said, well, let's just go sit out in the hallway for a minute and see if this works itself out. And so Waddy, Keith, and I went out in the hallway. And the next thing you know, we hear all hell breaking loose in the studio. Huh. And we go, oh, God, what's going on? We run in there. Well, Billy had a flask in his back pocket, a glass bottle of a pint of liquor. And Paul walked in and saw Billy sitting in front of the tape machine. Uh-huh. Billy had sat down in front of the tape machine and had grabbed the tape from right where it goes across the heads. So there's tape on either reel, on either side. Uh-huh. And he just started pulling it toward him off the machine. He was sitting down and then he fell down on the floor on his butt and was pulling this stuff down and shoving it in his mouth. What? And chewing on it, the tape. He pulled in and was shoving it, chewing on the tape. And Barry came running in and just wallowed and kicked him right in the ass and broke the flask in his butt, and stuff was spilling all over the ground, and they were jumping all over each other. Wow. And Keith and Waddy and I started running around the control center. Keith's going, grab that tape! And Waddy's going over and grabbing the outboard gear that was sitting on the side of the console. He's picking up pieces of machinery, and we're trying to hustle everything that we can save to get it out of their way. Uh-huh. And then Keith gets in there and goes, okay, bring it up, you guys, bring it up. This is it. Session's over. You guys take that outside and go do something else. We're done. And so broke the thing up and those guys left. And here we are sitting there with this tape as master tape
Uh-huh.
of one of the songs. It was the important song, crumbled up on the floor.
Wow.
It wasn't broken, but it was all crinkled like toilet paper.
Right.
Just a whole huge section of it right in front of the floor.
Did you say those was Studio A or B?
It was an A.
A, okay.
Yeah. And Waddy's going, I'm ruined. What are we going to do? And we're like, Keith goes, let me handle it. I'll fix it. Fix it? Look at it. He goes, no, I know what to do. So we made copies of the last part of the song that had that part in it, the part that was destroyed.
Yeah.
The part that was destroyed was the second verse or something like that.
Yeah.
We made copies of a repeat second verse at the end of the song on a separate piece of tape. And we had to hook up both rooms.
Wow.
24 track. In those days, they had a patch bay in the maintenance shop that you could put patch cords in and connect Studio A's tape machine to Studio B's tape machine.
Right.
So he hooked up both machines, and I had to go into the one room and run the one machine, Keith on the other machine, and he would send me the signal, and I'd hit record and record that verse. Then he took that verse and cut it into a piece, and he took all the tape that was crinkled up and cut it at the ends that were good, that were not in perfect spots. It didn't end right at the end of the verse. It was crossed over all kinds of spaces. And he took that out, and we placed the other piece in and found the spots that fit the end and the beginning of what was missing. And he had to cut that into 3 pieces.
Wow.
So it would fit. And because the tempos were a little bit different. So that was because we didn't have there was no, click tracks and anything on there.
Right.
So he's constructing this verse. And when he finished it, it was hours. It was sunrise before we got out of there. And he cut them all together. And I'll never forget. He goes, okay, let's run it. And this was razor blade editing with splicing tape.
Yeah. And I remember seeing you do that. And I remember.
Well, yeah, Keith taught me how to do that. Well,
yeah.
no,
And you were really good at it.
Yeah. A&M Records taught me how to do that. And then I had to do a lot more of it at Sound City.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember even my dad saying, "Oh, look, because you had to make an edit on something on Little Bit at a Time album. You had to do a splice, and
right.
and Jerry was like, he was so confident in your ability. He's like, oh, Steve's great at this, and so I don't remember what song it was or what it was, but yeah. But anyway, that Cowsill story is hilarious.
Yeah. Well, here was the thing. When he played the tape back, we were all watching. And as the tape rolled by, we were listening to the music to hear it. But as the tape rolled by, it was going. All the edit splices you could hear running across the tape. But he saved the day. You know?
Do you remember what song it was?
I can't remember.
I wonder if was it one that actually got released and.
Well, you'd have to look at the Bridie Murphy. I don't know if that album ever came out, but I think it was the only one they ever did.
What's the Brighton? Who are those? What are those names?
Bridie, Bridie, Bridie Murphy, Murphy, Murphy.
Okay. Bridie Murphy.
And it was some kind of Irish hero. He's a real person back in the 1800s.
Okay.
Like a cowboy or something.
But it was a Cowsills record?
It was a Bridie Murphy. It was Billy Berry. It was the Cowsills, yeah. But they turned into Bridie Murphy.
Oh, so it wasn't the actual. They weren't called the Cowsills. It wasn't like Susan Cowsill wasn't involved.
No.
Okay.
It was the 3 of those guys.
Okay,
it was a lot. It was a rock and roll thing.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Wow, that is a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot of tension there.
Yeah, I bet. So I want to. Do you actually recall when you met Jerry for the first time and like what your impression was, or?
Yeah, I looked up to him. So so we didn't bond real quick because I was just in awe of the guy. You know, he was one of the greatest artists I've ever met. You know, he just floored me. Anyway, it was Harvey. I was with Keith, and Keith goes, "I got some guy coming in. We need to set up this and set up that." And I don't think he didn't know who Jerry was either. And Harvey came in, and it wasn't a session. It was just they wanted to hear the studio.
Right.
And Harvey came in, and they had some tapes that Jerry had already made, and the song they put up was "Silly Old Gigolo."
Okay, from Devonshire.
Yeah, they played that song, and Keith was like, "This is a great song, man." You know, and we all, "I'm just a silly old." I love it at the end. Put all the women buy myself a Cadillac.
Yeah.
Put all the women in the back. yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great song! And that was the first time I met him, and his presence, just the way he handled himself, and the way he just looked like he knew more about what he was doing than any other producer I'd worked with up to that point. Because I'd worked with some guys that were producing huge hit stuff, and they all seemed like clods to me. They all seemed like they had no idea what they were doing. I mean, everything they did was kind of accidentally they got this right, and accidentally they got that right.
Yeah. So you hit it off.
Well, when we started working together, yeah. I'm trying to think how soon it was. Yeah, it was in the middle of Saving Grace where, we started getting comfortable with each other. And, he saw that I was really good at setting up the tracks and setting up mics. I had gotten real good about miking in those days. Yeah. And
what a great sounding record. Saving Grace has such a unique sound to it. A lot of low end. That's different.
Yeah, it's a real mellow.
Yeah.
It's a real mellow record compared to Little Bit at a Time.
Yeah.
Little Bit at a Time is just so full of energy.
Yeah.
Candy Bar, Easy Driver.
Yeah.
We're Real Fat. A Little Bit at a Time itself is,
Do you remember the big party at Studio A? Like I think it was after Saving Grace was done. Maybe it was. I don't know what the occasion was. I'm guessing it was like a album release party, but it was everyone. I mean, famous James McCrary taking pictures. I remember me and Angela running around. We're little kids and just like
there's a picture of you guys running around chasing each other. It's really cool.
That's on the Saving Grace out. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking. It's that party that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
and James McCrary, who took a lot of well-known album cover photos.
Right.
I think he took the Carole King album. But anyway, he took that picture, and I was just remembering that was like a huge party in Studio A. Maybe there were lots of huge parties at Studio, and that's just the one that I remember.
Well, yeah, I remember there was one for who was it? It had to do with Glenn Campbell and Tanya
Tucker.
Tanya Tucker, yeah, they were an item at the time, and there was a huge party there, and they got into a fight during it, and then toward the end of it, I walked outside, and there were like 4 or 5 people throwing up, standing outside bars. Yeah, that was crazy.
Oh boy!
I remember with the Fleetwood Mac being there. Lindsay came walking out in the studio, and I don't know how all these people found out about it. You know where Sound City was. It was out there behind the brewery, up down a little alley street, back in an industrial area there. You'd never know there was anything back there. And people started finding their way there. And Lindsay came out one night working with Fleetwood Mac, walked out into the lounge, and there was like 100 people out there. Is Stevie here? Oh, Lindsay, can you? And he ran right back in the studio, and he goes, "Who are all those people out there? How do they know who we are?" Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. I was there one night with Leon Russell. Used to use the studio all the time, and he came in there with Ringo and George Harrison one night.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, Ringo. I got to set up for those guys.
Oh wow!
And there was all kinds of other famous players, Nicky Hopkins and Jesse Davis and Tim Bogart, the bass player from Vanilla Fudge and Beck Bogart and the Peace. All these players, David Foster, all these players, and they were doing some Leon Russell song. And I walked out into the lounge to get something for one of them, and there was all these girls out there. And they knew Ringo was in there. And they were all, Ringo, can we get in this? And I was like, I'm sorry, ladies, it's a closed session. Y'all should go home. Nobody can get in here. She goes, oh, can you do me one thing? Just do me a favor and give this to him. Would you please? And she hands me a bag of Quaaludes. A big bag of Quaaludes, right? Yeah. So I go, oh, okay. If you guys will leave, I'm going to come out here, and if you guys will leave after I tell him he's got it, he's going to send you a thank you. You got to go. Oh, yeah, sure. I take him and I go, Ringo, these girls are out there and they handed you this. They want you to have this. And he goes, what is it? And I go, look, big bag of Quaaludes. And he goes, oh my God. And so he goes, give me a pencil. give me a Sharpie.
Uh-huh.
Give him a Sharpie, and he writes, no, 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 no. Because he had a song out called
Yeah.
No, 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 no,
Yeah.
I don't do it no more.
Yeah.
I'm tired of waking up on the floor.
Yeah.
And that was on the radio. And so I walked out there with this thing. I said, here, girls, here's your autograph. And I handed it. I said, now take these and go home, please.
Oh, wow. That is a wonderful story. I love that. You got to
No,
hand
no.
Ringo Quaaludes.
I know.
So before we wrap it up, there's another song from the Little Bit at a Time session, and I want to play this one because it's a great song. But it's also some of these songs, because I was hanging out during that recording of that record, and Little Bit at a Time. When, in those days, everyone, like you had mentioned earlier, everyone has to have their hands on something when the mixing is going on.
Right.
Someone is doing these knobs this way for this, or moving the fader down for this section or up for this section. So there's like 3 or 4, and I actually got to do something on one of these songs, maybe even this one. But what I remember is you on the intro of this song is there's a hi-hat where every other hi-hat hit, it has a reverb. The hi-hat is being sent to the echo chamber.
Right.
And then you dial it back for the next hi-hat hit, and then you dial it back to the echo chamber for the next one. And I'm seeing you turn the knob left to right, to left, to right for each time. And whenever I hear this, that's what I see in my head. You doing the knob to send the hi-hat to the echo.
It's like the Wizard of Oz when the curtain accidentally blows open and you see the wizard back there pulling all these knobs. You go, oh, that's how that works.
Right. Well, I just did it, and so now we're going to listen to the song. So everybody, when you hear the drum in the beginning and you hear you'll hear a hi-hat, and you'll hear one hi-hat hit that's very echoey, and then next one is very non-echoey or dry, we like to call it.
I think it's because if I didn't turn I was sending the echo with the knob and the fader to bring the audio up and down. And if I didn't do them both moves, the down hi-hat, if the reverb just stayed up, the down hi-hat would be playing through it anyway.
Right.
It was like pre-reverb.
Yeah.
And it would have just been howling in there through the whole thing. So you had to make both moves at the same time to keep it clean.
Yeah. So anyway, this is a great song. It all the way through, and it actually brings a piece of So Young into it, which is probably his best lyric. So let's listen to this. This is A Little Bit at a Time, and here we go.
Little bit at a time, precious time, mama. Little bit of the shine, that ain't no crime, mama. Oh, you're an angel, midnight angel. I'm a fool all over again, just like children, heaven's children. Don't you know they love to pretend? Little bit at a time, precious time, mama. Little bit out of line. You're such a crime, mama. Oh, you're a sailor on the high sea. Have to wait for the next wind to blow. I'm a river, run a long time. I could take you where you wanna go. Little bit at a time.
I can remember the sax overdub. I remember this
Oh,
Jim Horn doing the end sax bit with Dave. Dave redid his guitar part to make it go well with the sax.
right.
That was because it was originally different. Yeah.
I was surprised when he did a little reprieve to So Young at the end of that.
Yeah.
The thing about the guitars too, I got to give Dave a lot of the most original guitar sounds ever. All the guitars in here shine in a level of their own. You know,
absolutely.
He's such a great player. You know,
I like to call that solo a James Bond solo. It does that. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. James Bond solo. That's good.
Yeah. I don't know, Steve. Anything else? Any more thoughts you got there?
Well, I want to give one shout out.
Sure.
I forgot to mention that John Harris introduced me to Karen Menegay.
Oh.
And Karen and I, that was one of the great times of my life, even though I kind of blew it. But I was really thankful for that.
Yeah.
He should know that. That was a good thing that happened.
I remember Karen's great. She's great. I didn't realize that John introduced you guys.
Yeah, we met at a party of his in Venice Beach.
Well, this is how great you and Karen were to me. Do you recall that when I first moved to Phoenix, you guys had been living here,
right?
And I was going to move out. I didn't have a place to stay yet. You guys let me crash on your couch, for probably a couple nights, I think.
Yeah,
that was great. Karen's great.
Yeah, she is.
Well, Steve, this was fun. There's so much to talk about. I mean, we could go on and on. Thank you very much for joining me in the Riopelle Room. So glad you had this chat.
It's been my pleasure, Paul. I've been looking forward to this, and it's been everything I thought it was going to be. I loved it.
Great. And let's do it again. Like you and I and Plen. We'll do it.
You let me know, and I'm right there. I'm here. I got the equipment, and I got the time.
Sweet. All right, everyone. Thanks, and we'll see you next time in the Riopelle Room.
Bye, everybody.